Welcome to the Sales Management Fireside Chat Series. I'm Stephen Rosen, your host, and I'm very excited to have Danita Bai, CEO, Sales Growth Specialist. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the founder of Star Results, a boutique sales leader, coaching, training, and consulting organization. At Star, our belief is that sales leaders are the key to driving sales performance in organizations, and we provide them with tools, processes, and mentoring they need to be able to crush their sales numbers. Our mission is to create thousands of master sales coaches who will help their sales teams and organizations consistently drive great sales performance. And I believe the best way and most rewarding way I can achieve our mission is by educating, coaching, training, mentoring, and transforming sales managers into star sales leaders. Becoming a star sales leader coach will elevate one's career, income, and professional success. Today, Danita and I are going to discuss how to lead, develop, and retain millennials. This is a question that gets asked so frequently. I'm really excited to have Danita join me today to have this discussion. For those of you who hang into the very end, I have a special limited time offer. If you want to take your sales coaching to the next level and really have a great year, this special offer is for you, but you need to stay until the very end of the presentation. I'm privileged to have Danita Bai join me today at the fireside. Danita, MA, is a leadership and sales development expert. She has valuable leadership experiences ranging from sales leader at Xerox to private equity ownership in the medical device space. She serves as a contributing author to Forbes Coaches Council, Sales Coaches for Harvard Business School MBA students, and as a TEDx speaker on millennial leadership. Danita's passion is to energize and equip experienced business leaders of character to prioritize coaching the millennial leaders and salespeople. She contends that star performers responsible for sales growth in our business will primarily be millennials. That's why our ability to hire, engage, and retain upcoming leaders needs to be a top priority for leaders committed to maximizing results. Millennials are good for business. Her latest book, which we'll spend quite a bit of time talking about, is Millennials Matter. Proven strategies for building your next gen leader. Gaining recognition as one of the best how-to books on motivating, managing millennial leaders. She's been published in Forbes, Huffington Post, and CEO World. She's a mother of 3 millennials, has 4 grandchildren, lives on a ranch in North Dakota, and is passionate about inspiring business leaders to maximize their businesses, mobilize their millennial leaders, realize their leadership legacy, and let's give a big welcome to Danita Bai, this month's special guest. Welcome, Danita. I am so excited to have you here because for me, I get questions asked, I don't know if it's every day, at least a couple times a week about millennials, and there's no greater expert out there than yourself, and you've really taken an interesting niche in terms of understanding this so-called group of millennials, which maybe you can help our audience. Well, first of all, welcome. I want to welcome you here to the fireside. And I'm glad to have you. And so I guess there's lots of misconceptions, and we'll talk about some of the misconceptions and a bit about some of the realities. But for the audience, what sort of age range do we define as millennials?
Well, it's like everything. Every expert has their own definition on the age, but typically what I find is people who are currently between 20 and 36 years old are in this broad category of millennials.
Okay.
In reality, there's the, when we kind of look at what's happening psychographically, there's kind of the older ones and the younger ones.
Right, because that's a big age range. It's almost 20 years.
With the rapid pace of today's technology and shifts that are happening in the culture, my personal recommendation is that they're going to have to redefine what a generation is. because there's just so much change that's
Of
happening.
course. I mean, so given your range, I have two millennial children because one's 20 and one's 22. So I thought they
Yeah, absolutely.
and I can tell you, there are many differences between them, right? Between a boy
Well,
and a girl. So we talk generalities, but so sort of what portion of whether it's the labor force or salespeople, because we're talking to sales managers
right.
on this chat, uh, do they constitute? Or
So the numbers are that by 2020, which is next year,
yes, yeah,
50% of the workforce will be millennials.
wow.
By 2025, it will be 75%.
So
So we have got to understand the uniqueness of this generation and why um, our leadership matters so much.
and that's why I find the subject so fascinating. And your book, Millennials Matter, they obviously do, whether we like it or not. So, right. Especially, I know I'm a Gen Xer. I got, at the tail end of that. So, there's different people depending on where they were in that spectrum. It changes their not outlook, but their income certainly, or their
Yeah.
status. So tell me, I what I hear, and we have discussions because I have children that age range. People tend to talk about them maybe not in the nicest of ways. So let's talk about the positive attributes. Okay, if we were to talk about this group, what are the most positive attributes that we can look at?
Well, for me, again, coming from both a sales perspective and a leadership perspective,
Yes.
um, there's a couple of things that I find really encouraging and inviting. The first is that 91% of millennials aspire to leadership.
Okay.
So,
So,
regardless of what they maybe look like or act like, or there's something inside them that sees themselves as a person of influence.
okay, that's fascinating. Okay, because I think
If you think about it, that becomes a great kind of baseline or catalyst for us to have a conversation with people in this generation about things that really matter.
okay, okay.
So it allows us to really the first section of the first third of Millennials Matters about character.
Right, right.
And when I first started talking with leaders about character, they said, Danita, can't talk about that. I mean,
Because everyone's, especially us Generation Xers, and
yeah.
that's, probably most of my audience, but I'm sure given the age range of millennials, that there's many millennials who are listening in, but
So, but let me just kind of wrap that up because
sorry.
my response is um, yes, and the life of a leader, the life of a trusted advisor salesperson at its core is about character. You've got trust, you've got integrity, you've got dependability. At the core, those are about the inside of a person, and then how we serve our clients
Well,
and how we become a good employee for our company.
well, I mean, then it's fascinating because one, those are some of the key characteristics we try to teach leaders about authenticity, integrity. I mean, these are critical traits of people who will deem as great leaders. Right?
Absolutely.
Their inner traits, I don't know if you have stats on what other generations, because 91% to me is very insightful that they aspire to leadership, because that's
Right.
certainly not some of the misconceptions around millennials. Any sense of in your work of if we looked at the Generation Xers, would it be higher, lower? in terms of aspiration for leadership when they were in the same stage of their life?
I don't know the answer
Okay.
for Gen X, but when I'm talking with kind of the baby boomer leaders, that's probably the most shocking statistic.
Okay, so tell me.
Yeah, it is, because they're like going, wow, when we were that age, we just wanted to kind of survive. We just wanted to try and make it. We didn't, so the aspiration of leadership and influence, it maybe happened, but it wasn't something that was as high of a value.
Interesting. Okay, that's really interesting. So again, I talk about misconceptions, and I think you're helping to help people better understand. So if we were to talk about some of the misconceptions, and I don't want to throw out what they are because they're misconceptions.
Oh, I tell you what, our entire audience knows that they're narcissistic and entitled and living in the parents' basement, and I call it the fake news has branded
Yes.
this generation as all those negatives. And let's be real, other generations have been branded negatively.
100%. It's like stereotypes, right? You have that stereotypical image of any group, right? And
absolutely. And one of the other trends that we're seeing is that there are two groups. There's another millennial expert, Jason, and his last name is just skipping my mind right now. But he talks about that there's mega-lennials.
Oh, okay.
And me-lennials.
Interesting. Okay.
So in my book, Millennial Matters, I talk about the two-humped camel, but I like Jason's terminology better than the two-humped camel. This because there's this group of millennials that when you look at them, you just go, wow, they're so knowledgeable. They can get information quickly. They are confident when they're interacting. And really, you just go, wow. Then there's this second group of millennials, which has given the entire generation the bad name.
So now, does this vary by age? How do you differentiate these two groups? Is it?
I don't know the actual statistics of that. So I could make them up, but I'm not going to.
It's curiosity, and we haven't rehearsed any of the questions, so
no, we didn't.
So we're going with the flow. That's the whole idea of fireside chats. We're just chatting as two experts early in the morning. Well, not so early, but just having a chat. So okay, so misconceptions. I mean, the one I have is, I didn't want to say it, but lazy. And you said living in the parents' basement. So I think that kind of was a very nice way to put it. And, we encourage our kids to stay. It's a good way to save money because housing prices for this group, you wonder if they're going to be, because that, car, house, those are key sort of things that we purchase in our life. So if we were to contrast, and we're going to move into sales managers shortly, but if we were to contrast, so if I got it right, I'm a Generation Xer. Okay, and then millennials follow.
Mm-hmm.
So can you help contrast? Because we all look for differences and we try to understand each other, right? And are there some key differences in terms of how the old guys or the Generation Xers think versus millennials? If you can shed some light on that.
So there's so one is the leadership aspect.
Okay.
That's going to be a different value, and it's important for us as we're building a culture to keep that in mind. One of the next one that I believe is important as we're building a high performance culture is that 79% want a coach or a mentor, not a boss.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Yes.
so what does that mean for us as leaders? The moment we start to dictate or direct, that we're going to be hitting some roadblocks, and we need to think more about developing, having a strong, trusting relationship versus a command and control type of leadership.
Okay, that's very insightful because as much as we preach high performance is coaching and developing people, right, as the right way to go. I guess millennials have probably done some of the reading and understand the research on that, and demand that from their bosses, where maybe an older generation, were happy to, maybe that's how their parents parented them, versus a newer generation. Because I try to coach my kids, although I come from a coaching background, because you realize if you tell people what to do, it usually goes in one ear and out the other, or people get resistant. Nobody wants to be told what to do.
Right.
So that's fascinating. So I was gonna sort of move in. Hey, because I get a lot of questions from sales executives, sales managers. So I guess there's two levels, but they're probably similar. One is the executive coaching a millennial sales manager or working it, and then either a millennial sales manager or Generation X working with a salesperson. So, so you talk about coaching and development. What are some of the other drivers that hey, I'm going to coach you. I'm almost halfway there because I'm going to take a different approach with you than my way or the highway approach, right? Which there probably are still some old leaders, and I don't mean old by age, but old by mentality, that think, hey, they know better, and we're going to tell people what to do. And of course, that's the
Yeah, and I would submit that part of it has to do with age, but the other part has to do with personality. So I'll give you an example.
Yes.
This week, I've been working with a engineering company. I've had conversations with each of their 3 sales leaders.
Okay.
And it ended up, amazingly, that the similar pattern with all 3 of them is that they had a tendency to focus on what their team did negatively in the past versus highlighting what were the strengths and what they did well and how we could leverage that into the future. So they were giving negative feedback versus positive feed forward. And these were all the sales leaders were kind of that older millennial as well as Gen Xers.
Okay. Okay.
So it was insightful to me that this is not necessarily just kind of an older person thing, but was that
we're very cautious of that, aren't we?
it's a people thing.
Yeah.
And it was just it was a little shocking to me that kind of in this day and age that we have to talk about. No, you have to tell people when you're having a conversation, you have to tell them what they did well.
Well, I mean, it does build energy, right? I mean, one of the interesting courses I took many moons ago was really about if you build on positives and can do, well, you open up creativity, you create the right mindset, versus when you're focused on negative. Not to say you can't learn, use them as learning opportunities, but if that's where your focus is, as you said, feed forward. I know that if we, most old managers or maybe poor,
whatever we want.
Let's say poor,
poor managers. There we go. I love it.
Coach in the rearview mirror or manage. Yes. You looking at the rearview mirror, And the fact is, you can't change what happened in the past. It's always about moving forward,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And building on successes. So the millennials, do you think, crave that more? Or,
Well, again, this was fascinating. When I was growing up, growing into my sales management and sales leadership, the maxim that I used, both with my salespeople as well as with my children, is that for every critique, that it would take 10 compliments or words of encouragement to
yeah.
kind of neutralize that so that they could get traction moving forward. So recently it was after a meeting, and I had a millennial gentleman come up to me, and he said, Danita, with millennials, it's not 10 to 1,
Okay.
it's 100 to 1.
It's amazing, eh? Because as a leader, if you say the wrong thing, it's 100 to 1 is very, even 10 to 1 takes a lot of energy to change that mindset, or change how that person's feeling.
So do they crave it? I would say yes.
Okay, I mean,
The
it,
um, the about 3 out of 4 salespeople, excuse me, about 3 out of 4 millennials, when asked, "Do you get enough feedback at work?"
right.
Kind of the feed forward kind, they
Yes.
would
Okay.
say, "No, I don't."
Okay. I love that term, because feed forward. It's the first time I've heard that, and I bet it's in your book, and I must have missed it in the one chapter I didn't read. I'm teasing you.
Well, that's, what? It's very interesting because it's not in the book.
Oh, okay. Good.
Yeah,
Good.
it's not. I had, again, I had a speaking engagement with a number of small business owners. And this one president had a advertising agency where she had about 35 millennials. She was the only um, more seasoned one, and
Okay.
she had
So we're so apologetic over the
45. And
titles.
she goes, Danita, she goes, I call it feed forward. So I do a shout out to Heidi for that.
Okay, well, Heidi, thank you. Given it's not copyright, I'm going to store it here and use it when appropriate.
That's right.
So again, we have a lot of sales managers who register, and uh, I'd like to speak to them. So I am a sales manager. I've got half of my group is millennials. And you talk about high performance organizations, because many of us consultants, we're all trying to help people perform at a higher level.
Right.
So tell me what I need to do. Maybe I've asked this question before, because as I think about it, you've shared some stuff, but what do I need to do to really get the best performance out of my group of millennials, different than my group of Gen Xers?
So here's the first thought that comes to mind. And that is, we as leaders have got to tap the heart and the motivation of our people.
100%.
We all know this.
Yes. No, but again, it's we forget.
But we have to do it.
Yes.
So these 3 sales managers, when we as part of my process, we do, I'll call it kind of a CAT scan of the whole sales organization to get a understanding of who the people are on the team and what kind of development is needed. And one of the areas that we look at is motivation.
Yes.
Sales managers have to be great coaches. They have to be great motivators. They have to hold people accountable. So we were diving into that motivation area. And on their sales team, they had 0 salespeople that were goal motivated.
Really?
Now, what was interesting is that this company, an engineering firm, is high performance. They're meeting all their numbers,
Okay.
and their marketplace is getting tougher, and they've got some new competitors come in. So ultimately, to keep on the growth path, we need to raise the bar.
Yes.
And so as I was talking with the sales leaders, I said, your salespeople don't get up in the morning thinking about how can I make the company money. They get up in the morning thinking about how their job is going to help them reach their personal goals.
Okay. So
About
great insight.
the job that they're doing, how is that going to help send their kids to college, or be in the neighborhood they want, or depending on who it is, support the charities they want. I mean, the list
Yeah.
goes
Yeah.
on and on. But that is so if we haven't developed that discipline, that practice, we have to start doing it.
So
Because millennials want us to come along as a coach and mentor and to help them on this pathway. They want a collaborative culture. 88% want a collaborative culture, not a competitive culture.
right.
So we have to be on the same team for where they're going. Plus, here's another do. We have to help them to see how the work that we're doing is on purpose work, that we're serving the world, that we're serving the clients, that we're making the world a better place to be. So if we don't help them with their personal goals and we can't tie that into the purpose,
Right. A greater purpose.
we can't do that, we're going to lose them and they're going to go somewhere else.
Wow. So I would assume, because what I still come across is we throw more money at the problem if we're not getting performance. I assume that's absolutely the wrong approach. And of course, in many cases, I think this ties in. You let me know. Motivation is always it's an internal thing, right? Right. It's not about the external motivators, and money's the external motivator. So I always help managers. You got to understand the why.
Yes.
Does that change or become more important? I assume it's more important, but for the millennial, understanding the why they get out of bed and really tapping into that as their form of motivation.
Yeah, it's really a more important. And this is where often I'll have leaders say, Danita, you're not telling us anything new. We know this.
Fair
And
enough.
I'm going, yes. And your more seasoned players are going to stick around even if there's poor leadership that's not being diligent about coaching and motivating and accountability and casting vision. Your millennials, they're going to walk. So as leaders, we have to turn our talk and our head knowledge into practical, everyday, rubber meets the road actions to be able to work with and to retain the top tier millennials that we want.
Right. So just shifting gears here, because I'm going to give you a question from let's say an older or more seasoned sales manager.
We'll figure out the language.
Yeah. Well, no apologies for that, because what they say, 50 is the new 30.
That's right.
So we still, and maybe this will change over time, devise incentive plans.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and usually they're quota based. I mean, I'm still there, and maybe that's changing, but 50% of my folks are millennials, right? Or will be shortly.
Mhm.
So I've got a kind of a 50-50 mix. Obviously, we want to be able to fire at all cylinders and get everyone to perform. Uh, share some insights for that manager who is, we're close to actually the end of the year. So people are now working on their incentive plans for next year to get approvals. And we're going to be 50-50. Tell me how I can devise, that's the right word, a supercharged incentive plan for that other 50%. That
So my recommendation is
Yes.
you would need to go back to your people.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
love it.
because you do still have some millennials that are in extrinsically motivated.
Okay.
So they've got the house, they've got the car, um, they've got something externally that's motivating them. So you have to find out, you have to ask.
Okay.
And you have this other group that's intrinsically motivated, to be the best, to do better than they did previously, to learn.
Okay.
So you've got lots of internal markers that you're looking for. And then there's also this group, altruistic, which is all about serving. So you have to know your people.
Okay. I mean, it's a novel concept that you should ask. Right. It's a novel leadership concept. Ask the people. So,
Yes.
I mean, that's very true. And, I guess somehow I divide it up that some of that internal stuff is done on sort of a one-on-one basis where you coach and develop your people around that. So maybe a better question, because you mentioned and that collaboration
Mm-hmm.
is a key driver.
Right.
And when you talked about, very interesting, you said that they want to know that they did better than last year, but you didn't say better than their counterpart, right?
Yes.
Because the
Correct.
forced ranking
There's a
approach,
difference.
which maybe I might have used, and I thought effectively at the time. So maybe the question is, when you look at incentives, and assumingly it's incentives that we still want to put for salespeople, because somehow it still conceptually makes sense. Do we look at more of a team related versus individual? Would that be sort of a direction if you went out and asked millennials, which would they prefer in terms of maybe not all or nothing, but in terms of weighting? Is there a difference in weighting between a collective component versus all individual? So,
So again, you'd have to know your team.
okay.
But,
I'm putting you on the spot here.
well, so the reason I ask is one of my. You're familiar with the Strengths Finder.
Yes.
So one of my top. So my top one is a maximizer. So I love working with A players and take them to A plus. My next one is individualization. So I'm always looking at, what are the individual levers
Yes.
that we can, I'll say leverage, in order to stimulate, be a catalyst for high performance. So that's why I always say, oh, it goes back to the individual.
Okay.
Because one of the things, as part of my research on Millennials Matter, I invited 12 millennials to review the entire manuscript, give me feedback, and I have taken their comments, unedited.
Oh, wow.
Other than, maybe I broke the run-on sentence into, sentences that people could read, but I've
Yes.
included them. And there was something interesting in the area on collaboration, because everybody wants to collaborate. And one of the things that was so irritating to the group of millennials that I worked with
Mhm.
is that in school, when they had a group project,
Yes.
they carried the weight
Yes.
of that group project, and it irritated them.
Mm. I hear that at home from one of my children, actually from both of them, right? But I wonder how many of them feel that they've carried the weight out of the group. If you understand what I'm saying, right?
That's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that one.
No, and it's not a question because I don't know if you can find the answer to that, but
Right.
I assume it's more than one that felt they carried the weight
That could
because I've
be.
heard that a number of times. Uh,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, that's
That
group
could
work.
occur.
That goes back to my days in university, where you have some people who in any group, right? Because in the learning area, eventually you graduate, you go into the real world, and I used to tell my daughter that what, you're going to have people like that, in the company you work for, in your group, that you can't count on, that do the minimum, and you have to be able to deal with those people too, right? Because after school you can kind of say, I don't want to know you, or after the group work. When you're in the corporate world, it's like, okay, these people, how do they survive? I mean, I've always wondered that too, right? So,
It's in fact, I was talking with
so
someone the other day about this topic, and we were um, talking about sales managers and how many good sales managers did we have, and how many sales managers did we have to work around in order to get the number.
interesting. Yes.
And who was good and who were those that had the title of sales manager, but probably should have been left out in the field.
Right. Right. We do it in spite of our boss.
Yes.
Yes. Got you. So I have so many more questions, and I'm realizing, time just flies when you're having fun. So we talked about retention, and maybe just to solidify your thoughts, because there were some, I didn't ask you directly on retention, but you brought it up. So we have whatever, our top performing millennials. How do we make sure as a company that we don't lose them?
Well, it is bringing all of these aspects together in terms of um, seeing them as leaders, to have those types of conversations, to be coaching, mentoring, to have a collaborative environment where we have, as I call it, we're kind of all rowing in the same direction
Mm,
as a company and as a team. So it's about seeing their leadership potential. It's about kind of hearing their cry for coaches, mentors, for belonging, and then having us all kind of row in the same direction. And when we have those elements in place, I believe that we're going to have a culture that they want to stay at and they can grow with.
okay.
Because if they don't have those things, they're going to go somewhere else.
Okay. So culture becomes a much more leadership culture, which I know we both work with clients on, and I've never, has been tapped into the millennials, as I've learned a lot today. But a lot of the basic principles of good leadership, of
Yes.
performance culture, apply. But to me, what I'm hearing is they're even more applicable with
Yes.
this group than with maybe prior groups. And if you're not a top manager, who's applying those principles, who are good at, connecting with their people, supporting their people, understanding their intrinsic motivations, setting the right culture. And the right culture, what I'm hearing, is not competition between salespeople, because sometimes some great managers thrive on this competitive environment. I know my daughter's in a collaborative environment, and she loves that.
Right.
Right. So I'm not saying she's indicative, because she's kind of the tail end, but I
Sure.
do notice these things, and I'm certainly much more competitive, and I was more competitive in
Yes.
my younger days. But that doesn't make me any less in terms of a producer or a high performer. Um, so I had questions on coaching and development, but I think you've covered those in discussion, because I've actually walked away with a much greater understanding now of how I can help leaders, even millennial leaders. So if you're you're the sales executive, and these days, if you're over 50, you're probably not going to be a sales executive, as my friends tell me, right? So you're probably sort of closer to that generation than others, and you want to help your sales managers get better. So what can you do as the top guy or gal? Because many of them are obviously, women are thriving because a lot of these things they're much more attuned to than men. And we won't get into the Venus and Mars thing right now, right? Because that could be another subject we can talk about. But okay, I'm talking to Steve, who's the senior executive. How does he create the right culture for his managers to lead, and for his people to feel engaged? Because those are still important things for everybody.
So the way that I have started to summarize it is millennials matter.
Well, that's clear.
And,
yes.
And leadership matters. Our leadership matters. It's always mattered, but it's like a 10x or a 100x leader. Our leadership matters as we think about how to imprint and influence this generation to become those trusted advisor salespeople, those trusted advisor managers, those trusted advisors, to have the characteristics of the trusted advisor. They need to see that mentored with us. They need to see that in our life. So millennials matter, and our leadership matters.
Very powerful message. I was going to ask if there's any other closing comments, and I don't want to take away from your last comments, because those are, I don't want to use a swear word either, because sometimes people are offended. Those are awesome. Any other comments that you think would be valuable to people who've probably taken away a ton of stuff today? If they didn't read your book, they may want to read it. And I'm not here to promote a book. I'm here to promote a concept that, millennials matter. 50% of your workforce, if not today, tomorrow will be there. And if you want to successfully lead and be on, have a top performing team, you need to understand this group.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's a great. Millennials matter. Your leadership matters. To create high performance teams, you have to ramp up and be more diligent and strategic about your leadership skills.
Well, Danita, I want to thank you profusely for sharing your knowledge with our audience and with me. I mean, this has been a great learning experience. I can probably be much better at answering questions when it comes to millennials now than I was yesterday.
Oh, well, thank you. Hopefully we can do it again.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yes.
So I look forward to the next time we have an opportunity to collaborate and share our collective wisdom. And thank you for agreeing and being part of sitting with me at the fireside.
I love it. Love it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great fireside chat. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I have. And for those of you who've hung in, I've got something special for you. I'm going to give you a special offer to help you to start crushing your sales numbers in 2019. I've broken down performance into 3 zones. One, I call for those sales leaders who are crushing it, or 100% or over, are in the crushing it zone. You're making big bonus. Your team is content. You feel like you're making impact. We all want to live in the crushing it zone. Then if you're below 100% and you're between 90 and 99.9, you're struggling. You're in the caution zone. Things are a lot tougher. You had a tough time finishing off the year, and not everyone is making bonus. And that's probably 30 to 40% of managers. And then there's folks who are in what I call the danger zone. And you know what the danger zone is. You're below 90% of quota, and you're struggling to make your sales numbers. Life is not as good as it can be. So ask yourself where you finished off the last year and see what you're going to do differently. If you're struggling, what are you going to do differently in the new year to make an impact on your sales. Okay? And sales leadership is not about making speeches. It's not about attributes. It's about results. So as a sales leader, we all want to be in the crushing it zone, and I'm going to help you find ways to get there. And the one solution I have, and I'll share with you why coaching and effective coaching that's done frequently and methodically can have a tremendous impact and move you out of whatever zone you're in into the crushing it zone. Research from Corporate Executive Board shows that highly effective coaches drive 19% more sales than their less effective counterparts. Yet, only 7% of sales managers are effectively coaching, according to Dave Curlin and Associates. So we provide you with the Focus Sales Coaching, which offers you a step-by-step video instructions workbook that you can go back and look over and understand and learn and become really good at coaching. The second thing is there's a 17% increase in sales for coaches who are out more often than their coaching counterparts who are not out in the field very frequently. The only problem is, according to Dave Curlin and Associates, only 14% of sales managers spend enough time in the field coaching. So we provide you with tools to plan your coaching time and to track your coaching time, because that's going to make a big impact on your overall sales. And the last statistic that came from CSO Insight showed that sales coaches who follow a coaching methodology get help to close 17% more sales than their counterparts who don't follow a formal coaching methodology. The only problem is, according to research that we've done in the STARS Sales Manager Report, is that only 44% of companies follow a formal coaching process. So, with Focus Sales Coaching, we have a proven coaching process that follows 4 steps and it involves using a coaching mindset. We'll teach you our system so you can have a proven methodology and close more sales. So at the end of the day, you know the opportunity. If you're in any of those zones, whether it be the caution zone or the danger zone, you know the opportunity to get out of that is coaching. And as Nike says, it's really up to you to just do it. I've provided you with a solution that will help you move into the crushing it zone. It'll help you make bigger bonuses. It'll help pump up your team and help you feel like you're making tremendous impact on your sales. So all you need to do is sign up, and I'll give you a free coaching session to make sure you can effectively implement the methodology, and we'll give it to you at a special price. And all you need to do is go to the simple URL to get a workbook and to get access to the Focus Sales Coaching course, which you can take as many times as you want. You can practice, you can go chapter by chapter, and all you need to do is go to www.starresults.com/2019. If you want to have a kick-ass year in 2019 and you're not getting the performance you need, I highly suggest you check out Focus Sales Coaching, because you want to live in the crushing it zone.